All right, all right. It is Wednesday night. You guys know what that means. Another conversation with Cougars. And I cannot tell you how pleased I am. My guest tonight, my former classmate, teammate, number 34, Mark Saffold. Hey, buddy, how are you doing?
Bernard, I am doing great, man. It is great to see you again, buddy.
It is good, and I am a little upset with myself. I just learned recently, Mark and I are practically neighbors, hadn't seen each other in ages, but next week we're going to fix that. We're going to find us some time to go break some bread.
Yes, sir. That's going to change.
Excellent, excellent. Well, guys, if you know anything about the Northview program, you know the name Saffold, Mickey, older brother, Mark, younger brother, awesome contributions, great friends, great teammates. I could go on and on about the Saffold brothers, but knowing Mark and knowing Mickey, they don't want to hear that. They just want to talk about the good times. So that's what we're going to head into. Mark, before we go back in the Wayback Machine, share a little bit about yourself these days, your beautiful family. Catch us up real quick.
Thank you, Bernard. Currently I reside in Birmingham, like you said, not too far from you, not too far from Jamie, a couple of others up here. Been in Birmingham since 1995. Been married for close to 28 years.
Awesome.
3 beautiful children. Oldest daughter is 23. The middle daughter, she's 20. And my son, he's 17, currently a senior in high school. Things just moving along. Been employed up here. A lot of people know the bank as Compass Bank, which converted to BBVA Bank, which is now about to convert to PNC Bank. So I've been employed with basically in banking, well over 20 years now, and been living in Birmingham ever since then.
Awesome. And I know that you put some time in the Marines and are
Sure did.
representing our country. I want to thank you for your service. And I just know you, and I know how hard you must have worked during that time period. So thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Bernard. Appreciate that, buddy.
Absolutely. Well, we got all the thank yous out of the way. We're going to head back to some good old times. We want to welcome Mark Chambliss from Dothan. Mark, I think was brother Mickey's age or close to the same age. But thank you, Mark, for joining us. There'll be some others, and I'm sure, Mark, as we go through this, I'll mention them to you. I want to start out a little different than I normally do. I want to talk about what was it like being a Northview Cougar for you? What did that mean to you as a kid? What did it mean to you growing up? Those kind of things.
I think number one, Bernard, being a Cougar, everything was tied to my last name. My big brother Mickey, just trying to live up to who he was and what he stood for. Northview was everything to me, all the way from my elementary days. It was all about, Northview, which was across the highway from where we stayed. And, my brother Mickey and the Mark Chamblisses and the Doug Joneses and all of those guys, the Leon Morrises, Tim Whaley, you name it, Larry Roberts. I just wanted to wear that maroon and gold and represent the way I saw those guys walk around and, dominate on Friday nights, where they carry themselves on the practice field. Just that great big old school, man. I wanted to be a part of it, from an early age, and just hearing all the stories from my brother.
Well, I was going to say, having Mickey as an older brother probably just continued to feed into that. What's the age difference between you guys?
5 years apart, Bernard. 5-year difference. 5 years.
So you were just young enough to be a pest, but just old enough to tag along sometimes. And Mickey just joined us. Awesome. I should have had Mickey
Big
on.
brother.
Big brother. So Mark, let's share a little bit about younger brother, older brother dynamics. As you know, I've got two younger brothers. Rob was close to your age, a year younger, and then Dave was several years younger. I know how I treated my younger siblings at times. Statute limit, well, I don't know. Mickey's watching, so you better watch it. Talk about those dynamics. Walking, you're seeing your big brother do his thing, and he's a senior when you're maybe an eighth grader or seventh grader. Talk a little bit about that.
That whole dynamic was, wherever he went, I wanted to go. When he stepped foot into the neighborhood, with Doug and Leo, I wanted to be there. I just loved, what he stood for, how he carried himself. They were always into something. So, man, I just wanted to learn what they were doing, and the thing about it, Bernard, my brother never pushed me away. If they played football, if they played basketball, all those guys, including my brother, they'd find somewhere for me to kind of fit in, where I wouldn't get hurt. But they all took a little time, man, and just kind of planted some seeds within me. So, man, I was very appreciative of that.
Well, I have on good authority, this is not a paid endorsement by Mark right now. Just knowing the Saffolds and their beautiful family back in the day, I know that's genuine. But where did the athleticism come from? You both could do just about anything you wanted to on a sports field or a court. Where'd that come from? Did either of your parents play sports growing up, or share a little bit about that?
Well, coming up, we would hear stories from our parents, and my dad, he grew up in the Ashford area, and we'd always hear stories about him playing baseball and playing basketball. And my mom, she grew up in the Dale County area, and she would always talk about her time playing basketball. So I'm quite sure that we got some of that. If not all of it, from the athleticism that they displayed in their youth, in their time of, growing up. But yeah, mom and dad both played sports coming up, very athletic. And I know, dad would always, take us out and, jog with us and things like that. So, mom and dad, had a lot to do with it.
That's so cool. So cool. Mark, let's talk about being in the stands in middle school, having Mickey on the field and that wonderful season that they had. And do you have any memories of back in the day running around Ripview Stadium before it was your time to be on the field?
The thing about that, Bernard, on Friday nights as a kid, we always had our own little game going on somewhere off to the side. We'd get we'd get an old cup, ball it up, and that was our football. And we would play football the whole night. We'd stop and watch the game for a little bit, but we would, play our own little game. But we would always just hear the hooping and the hollering from the crowd. Listen to the band. It was just packed, man. It was standing room only. And as kids, as little boys, myself, Joe, Ripview was like a castle to us.
Well, I was just getting ready to say, Mark, as a youngster, any kid of that age, and when I say that age, not old enough to be in the high school team, but middle school and even late elementary school, when you get to go run around with your buddies and play ball and come check in with mom and dad when you needed something to drink or whatever, we don't appreciate it back then because that was just what we knew. But at least for me, when I reflect back on those days, man, it just brings a smile to my face. Just remembering who my buddies were. And you mentioned Joe. I want you to list some of your running around buddies back then. Who were some of your guys?
Let me see. In my neighborhood, it was Joe. Used to run around with Pat Fitch a lot. There were some guys who didn't play football that I ran around with. DeVellis Butler, Larry Thomas, Gerald Thomas. But one of the constants that we kind of ran around with too was Doug's family. You know, his nephews, we used to run around with them a lot. But anybody up and down that street from my neighborhood to Young America, we just ran. Chris Parker, all of them.
Oh man,
Those are
that's
some
some
names. Yeah.
shady characters you're listing right there. Fitch and Parker. Come on now, we got to clean this up. But I will say, of course not. What I will say, Mark, is it never ceases to amaze me the level of athleticism, the volume of athletes who grew up in that neighborhood, who not
Oh yeah.
only had successful high school careers and then went on a lot went on to college, but then even into the professional ranks. Just phenomenal.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I you know, I can recall, you know, always seeing Woo. You know, Woo was always nearby. You know, so man, we were around it all the time.
Tell
You know,
me,
throughout our
tell me
neighborhood.
somebody with a more outgoing, positive personality than Woo Woo Parker. I dare you. I dare you. And speaking of shady characters, Mark, we got Keith Dudley. Big Dud is in the house.
Big Dud, my
Just to
man.
say hello. Oh, and the shadiest of all characters, Shirley C is here.
Oh,
with
Miss
me.
C. Oh, love you, Miss C.
And she says to tell you hello, but the shadiest of characters. Well, Mark, let's talk a little bit about middle school. Where'd you end up going? What sports did you play? And did you, as an eighth grader, just that year couldn't go by fast enough before you could get over to the view?
I went to school at the great Beverly Middle School,
Mhm.
the Beverly Wildcats.
Yeah.
And it was an honor to play for the legendary Coach Willie Kellum, Coach Johnny Potter, Coach Laurie. That was my stomping ground. And as a matter of fact, my first organized year of playing football was eighth grade. So that was the first year of playing just organized sports, but running around Beverly Middle School with Coach Willie Kellum. Myself, Joe, others. That's where we learned to get out there, man, and just tear it up. Also, a lot of people probably not aware of this, but Teapot came out of Beverly. Todd Knight, some of those names, Earl Carter, Bill Schofield. We had the tango, you know, out there in that field every day with Teapot.
Well, Mark, I'll tell you, on certain cold, rainy days, I can still feel the impact of Teapot on that hit he put on me my senior year, your sophomore year.
Yeah.
But anyway, Teapot,
Great man.
Such an athlete, such a fine fella. But
Yep.
Mickey, being 5 years older, did he miss the middle school transition? Was it still junior high? Where did he go sixth, seventh, eighth grades?
Mickey was one of the first ones to attend Beverly once it was constructed.
Okay.
So Mickey came out of Beverly Middle School as well. Him, Doug, whole crew, you know. So
I just wasn't sure when it converted over from junior high to the middle school time period. Okay. So eighth grade, you're playing football. Are you playing any other organized sports at the time? Do you have any other interests, like, I don't know, band or anything else?
You know, at Beverly, it was football, then it was basketball, and then you ran track.
So it was the sport of the season, is what you're
It
doing.
was sport of the season. Played some baseball coming up too, over at Lincoln Community Center. So you're right about that. Whatever the season was, you know, that's what we did.
Yeah. Did Mike Henry come through the Lincoln Center? Do you know, for baseball?
Mike Henry, Teapot, all of them.
I remember playing against Mike in middle school. I just couldn't remember which program he came through. Tracy Donnell, want to welcome Tracy tonight. Guys, we're talking with Mark Saffold, and we're living some good memories. The Young America across the street from, gosh, I made so many trips over there, carrying folks home or picking folks up, making sure they weren't late for workouts and stuff. Do you
the Rocky Branch area,
That's right.
Mhm.
That's right. Do you remember us being called either Kmart High or Burger King High back in the day?
Kind of, sort of. I knew Kmart was right down the street,
Right.
you know, and that was a track route, for all the track runners,
Well, we're going to definitely get the track aspect of this. But Mark, you
Yeah,
remember our colors were almost the same colors as Burger King at that time. And so I
yeah.
remember us getting called Burger King High. Anyway, I didn't know if you had remembered any of that, but I suspect in the Saffold household growing up, there wasn't a lot of laying around the couch in the afternoons and just lazy, just playing video games or whatever you had at the time. I suspect you were out in the neighborhood almost every day.
I think about it as soon as the sun rose,
Uh-huh,
Bernard,
uh-huh.
we were grabbing our bikes and we were down the street somewhere.
Mhm.
We
Now,
were knocking on someone's door, and it was all day
yeah.
playing.
Now, in the Saffold household, what was the indicator when it was time to come home for dinner?
It was usually a street light.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Usually a street light. You could hear the
Yep.
hum of it.
Yep.
And hey, it was time to, hey guys, I'll see you tomorrow. We
Mm-hmm.
got to go home, and it was you started it all over the
Because
next day.
everybody knew, everybody knew. Some families had a big dinner bell. Some families had one, somebody whistling or something like that. But I didn't know what it was y'all's. Now, in eighth grade, that eighth grade Beverly team, who were some of your teammates, if you recall, who ended up coming over to Northview with you?
You know what, Bernard? It was just me and Joe
Really?
primarily.
Mm-hmm.
Beverly was the majority of that football team. Charles Brown, Teapot,
Mm-hmm.
Todd Knight, Earl Carter,
Yeah.
Bill Schofield, Edwin McNeil. The majority of that team went to Dothan High.
Somebody was doing
Yeah.
some recruiting. Now, Mark, you
Yeah.
keep mentioning Joe. I know who Joe is, but folks who weren't from our time period may not know who Joe is. Let's give him a little shout out.
Oh, Joe Easley, my first cousin. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man,
Yeah.
you know what I need to do? I've had some of the Easleys on, some of the younger generation had Eric. I ought to get the whole crew on and see how that dynamics. That'd be a fun show, wouldn't it? I want to welcome
That'd be good.
Selwyn Lynn, who's going to be a guest in a few weeks. Selwyn, thank you for
From the
checking in.
neighborhood. Yeah.
Yep.
Man. Yeah. From the neighborhood. Yes, sir.
All right, Mark, let's talk about ninth grade and heading over to Northview, that humongous campus. As,
Mm,
as, as great as Beverly, Girard, Honeysuckle, Carver all were, you come over to Northview and it can be intimidating.
yeah.
But you had the benefit of an older brother. You'd been over to the school probably many, many times, but it's still different when you're a student. Talk a little bit
Yeah.
about that transition, because even in the most confident of athletes, even the most confident person in academics, it's still new. And do you
Yeah.
have any recollections of that?
It's probably a two part story.
Mhm.
As far as athletics, the athletic building and everything, I knew that building like the back of my hand,
Mhm.
Bernard, because I used to go and hang out at my brother's
Yeah.
practices, going in and out of the building. But as far as the main building, now, yeah, that was intimidating. That
Mhm.
was that was intimidating. Just the hallways, the maze of lockers. Trying to figure all that out as a ninth grader. That was all new. That was all brand new territory. So yeah, I had to kind of rely on my brother to kind of, hey, what happens over here and what happens over there. But yeah, but the athletic side, man, I knew the locker room area. I knew all of that like the back of my hand.
And that
you
was,
know,
I'm sure that helped your transition a little bit. Now,
it did.
I want to talk a little bit about the Saffold dynamics between father, older brother, younger brother. Older
Hmm,
brother had already been through the program. He had the hardware on his hand to show it. He's in college
right.
at this point. He's done his time. It's now your time. I want to
Hmm.
talk about Mickey's influence about helping your game to develop. Were you
Hmm.
back then receptive to taking uh, um, not criticism, but maybe there was some criticism, but some coaching from either your dad or from Mickey at that time? Because not all family dynamics work very easily in that regard. So share a little bit about how that worked for you.
I think the only thing that I heard my dad would say, he'd always say, "Hey, good game."
Mhm.
Didn't give too much football advice. I think he left that to Coach Parrish.
Mhm.
But my dad, he was always a positive influence, as far as encouraging us after a game, always, asking us, how practice was, things of that magnitude. But he was always there, always in the stands,
Mhm.
always with a smile.
Mhm.
Mickey, he was more or less, "Hey, good game." He had already, led by example.
Mhm.
So already knew the toughness that I needed,
Mhm.
just from watching him. So he really didn't have to reiterate anything. I
Mhm.
just knew that, hey, Sappho was on the back of my jersey, or Sappho was my last name, and I better do what I was supposed to do.
That really is such a one. It's refreshing because it's too easy. I've been there. You've probably been there from time to time. You kind of have to check your coach mentality and just be the dad or the parent. It's hard.
Yeah.
It really is, because you want your child to do the very best. Well, it's not like they're out there messing around and, look, I'm going to embarrass the family name on purpose.
Right.
But you're so right. And I know that each generation hopefully learns from the previous generation, but
Yeah.
that's and I suspected you were going to share that was your dad and Mickey's approach, because you put enough pressure on yourself. And
Oh yeah.
I know that
Oh
I
yeah.
did. I know that both of my brothers did. You don't need
Hmm.
anybody else pouring gas on that fire. It's already lit, and it's already,
It's
coming from within. Now, we're
absolutely.
going to skip around just a little bit, but I want to talk about the Oklahoma drill and why you loved it so much. For the Oklahoma drill is long gone, but for those
Yeah.
newer who may be watching this, I want you to describe it. For me, it was fear. I hardly ever had to do it, of course, but it separated the football players from those who ended up playing other sports.
Oklahoma was just that thing where, you could just kind of settle all debts. If somebody, during the course of the day, had gotten on your nerves, Bernard, okay, you're at linebacker, you're at that defensive line, okay, I'm running the ball, we're about to settle all debts.
Mhm.
And it really separated those who really wanted to play football
Mhm.
and those who, hey, I just want to kind of be on the team.
Yeah.
But at the same time, man, it instilled some toughness, because that was man on man.
Mhm.
There was no hiding, there was no running to get away from anything. It was the cones lined up,
Mhm.
and baby, you had to get it. You had
That's
to
right.
get it.
It did. It separated the so-called men from the boys.
Yes,
But
sir.
the thing that always did get me was around the horn.
Oh
And I
yeah.
don't know where Coach Parrish and those other coaches came up with that, but my gosh, I dreaded it. What was it, 2 minutes? I can't remember how long it was,
It
but
seemed like
it
it went
seemed
on
like,
and on and on.
oh man, it seemed longer than a
Yeah.
600-page book to take. But describe what it was like for you, because when we did these, guys, those who are watching, we were divided up in our position groups, and you had to
Absolutely.
go coach to coach stations throughout the
Yep.
entire upper field, um, uh, blue floor, or
Yep.
the surface of that part
Yeah.
of the campus, and each coach had different drills. And
Absolutely.
the one I dreaded the most, I bet you, is the same one you dreaded the most. Coach Griffin. For
Oh
me.
man.
For
Oh
me.
man. Watching Coach Griff go to work. I know he was a true mastermind at what he was trying to get out of players, what he was trying to get out of his DBs, those corners, those safeties.
Mhm.
He knew just how far to take you and then bring you back. But yeah, Coach Griff was a mastermind of getting us all conditioned, getting us ready. But yeah, man, once you went over there to him, you didn't know when you were going to stop. You
Yeah.
know. You didn't know.
stopped when he said you were going to stop. But Mark, let's back up a little bit to ninth grade. Let's talk
Okay.
about who were your coaches in ninth grade. What was where did you first land position wise, and share a little bit about that transition from the middle school game to the now high school game.
Okay. If I'm not mistaken, I do believe Coach Tribb was down there with us. Coach Cleveland. I believe Coach Singletary kind of worked with us too. Coach Farris. They worked with us down there. Transitioning from Beverly, I played running back and I played linebacker. When I got to the ninth grade over there working down in the hole, I played some cornerback, a little strong safety. I may have ran the ball every now and again, but that was O'Shawn's thing. But I played a lot of corner ninth grade, so I really thought I was going to be a DB coming out of ninth grade.
And that's a bit of a transition to a completely different position. It's one thing to be a linebacker, but now you're running and running and running
and running.
Yeah, and running. But when you're on ninth grade, you're down in that pit. It's the hill, which none of us even today have good memories of. But what was it like for you to see what was going on the upper field when you're down in the pit as a ninth grader?
It was a true gut check, Bernard, to be honest with you, because as ninth graders, we could hear all of the commotion going on up top. We could hear the whistles, we could hear the tackling, and we heard the whistles, and we could hear all the different little I don't want to call them fights, but players would get into it, and we as ninth graders, we could hear all of that going on up top, and we just knew, hey buddy, that's where we're going to be next.
Yeah.
So we better grow up quick. And but yeah, man, you could just it was a different excitement going on up top. It was different.
I always thought it was, whether they really thought this through or not, I always thought it was pretty brilliant to have the ninth graders down in the pit practice separately from the high school. The upper class 10th through 12th graders. And the reason why, to me, is a ninth grader seeing what was going on up on the hill created this fuel, this desire. That's where I want to be next year. I want to be
that's where I want to be.
Yeah. So Mark, it's one thing to transition as an athlete out of middle school into high school, but academically it's a whole different thing, because you got to figure out scheduling. This is ninth grade. Hopefully you're a little organized leaving middle school, but the reality is most of us, it takes until ninth grade, and you've met with maybe a college counselor or your guidance counselor, and they're starting to set into place, hey, this is your next 4 years to get you ready for whatever's next after that, college or whatever it may be. So how organized as an eighth grader going into ninth grade were you, and how long did it take to kind of get adjusted to the academic load at Northview?
Fun story, Bernard. I was pretty organized eighth grade, because we didn't have much traveling distance in eighth grade. We had these pods, the way Beverly and Honeysuckle were set up. So you just walked around in a circle all day from one class to another class. But I get to Northview, and man, there's these long halls, and there's these bells, and I've got to get to this class before that next bell rang. So I was pretty unorganized my ninth grade year. It took me a whole year of just trying to figure it all out. Studying, that was a mountain to climb for me. Didn't really understand what it was to actually study hard. I knew how to open up a book, but I didn't understand what studying hard was. But it took that whole ninth grade year just to really understand the whole system of getting to class on time, and turning in assignments, and it was very challenging.
And I think that's pretty typical, Mark, for freshmen, particularly at big high schools. That
Yeah.
campus is gigantic. If you try to go from the 600 or 700 hall at the far end of the school all the way down
Hmm.
to the gym or even the math hall, was it maybe 300? I can't remember. You got
Yeah.
to book it. And you might have
Yeah.
to buy your locker, which at our time period was right out in the middle. Thankfully, you
Right.
kind of stop through. You couldn't stop very long to catch up with your
No.
buddies or even go to the bathroom because
Uh-uh.
you missed that bell. If you came into Miss Alice Sewell's class or Miss Van Landingham's class, you
Yeah.
had, yeah, let me
Oh
talk
yeah.
to you after class. Yep, you didn't want none of that. But Mark, I want to talk about Fridays. I want to talk about home games. We had pep rallies and you got to wear your jersey. Let's
Oh
move
man.
forward to sophomore year.
Mm.
Sophomore year, you're in the backfield. Sophomore
Yeah.
year, you've got LaRue Freeman. You've
Oh
got
yeah.
Lawrence Dawsey. You got O'Shawn. You got Raymond Bruner. You got a whole bunch
Isaac
of
Salter.
talented
All of them.
guys. Let's
Hmm.
talk about wearing that jersey on Fridays, going to the pep rallies. What did it mean to put on that jersey Friday morning and come over to school?
You felt like a king on Fridays, Bernard. It seemed as if everything just kind of stopped
Mhm,
for the football players.
mhm,
Um, not that we were given so much extra or preferential treatment, but to wear those jerseys, man, everyone just kind of respected you, and they just knew that you were going to go to battle for the school that Friday night.
mhm.
You know, the teachers might have talked to you a little bit different. Things just seemed to flow, and man, you just felt like a king because you just knew that you were going to go out there and battle for your school, and wear that maroon, you know, and I can't say it again, man. You felt like a king, Bernard.
But now I want to add a layer to this. You saw your brother for years on Fridays leave
Yeah.
school, leave home with that jersey on, but you didn't get to
Yeah.
come to school. You were at a different school, obviously, with the years difference. But now you're
Yeah.
getting to put it on. Do you remember thinking, now it's my time? Now it's my
Yeah.
time to
Absolutely.
get that jersey.
Hey, absolutely, man. As a Saffold, I knew that okay, now's my time. My brother has poured certain things into me. It's time for me to kind of get out there and show some stuff now. You
Mhm.
know,
Now,
absolutely.
let's do a little comparison. And this isn't all about Mickey, but we can't tell the Mark Saffold story without some Mickey Saffold in there. What could you do more athletically than Mickey? What could Mickey do more athletically than you?
I would say my brother was more tenacious.
Mhm,
Just flat out run through a brick wall.
mhm,
You know, me, I may have had an extra cut step here or there.
mhm.
You know, but as far as tenacity, man, I didn't man up to my brother when it came to tenacity. Number 25 would just run through anything. You know, but I think 34 may have had an extra step here or there.
Well, I got news for you. I saw 34 up close. He run through a couple of walls too. Now, let's also take it your sophomore year, my senior year, first game of the year. We're playing that Monday after the hurricane. It's on
Mm.
Labor Day. We're playing Robert E. Lee. They've come down to Dothan. They're heavily ranked. First
Yep.
series, what happens?
It was just unbelievable. We're all ready to play, and you just think the game's going to unravel. You hope to win, know you're going to win, want to win, and plays of all plays, Lawrence gets hurt, and it's like, what in the world, and I could, you just kind of feel the hush
Mhm.
over our side,
Yeah.
we're all looking and wondering. It's like, oh my goodness, you know, number one is hurt, and,
Yeah.
and and he's not coming back in.
No, it was about the third or fourth play of the game. He gets hurt. And I suspect you and O'Shawn and Raymond had a uh-oh, what's next, coach moment.
Yeah, yeah,
And it was time, you hate to say it, but at that time, next man up. because we got to have some
Yeah.
folks in the backfield who can do some work. And I know
Yeah.
Ocean got the most of those carries and most of the time during that time period, but you were in the mix from time to time. But I want to talk about the mindset of you had to go from being a 10th grader on the JV to I got to be ready on Fridays if Coach Parrish needs me, if Coach Andrews needs me. And sometimes we did. So
Absolutely.
you had to grow up in a hurry, and not that you had far to go, but you had to get that experience. So share a little bit about that, going from, well, I'm just glad to be here up on the JV Friday night dressing out, and we're going to see what happens, to I'm now in the mix in the top 15 in the offense right now. So share a little bit about that process for you guys.
I know as a sophomore, Bernard, I knew I wanted to play, and I knew I wanted to contribute. I was nowhere near the caliber of a LaRue, nowhere near. LaRue was larger than life to me, But at the same time, I knew that I better be ready, in case he came out, needed a breather. I better be ready to take that play in. Whatever Coach Parrish might call, give it to you. I knew I better be ready, to answer that bell. But as a 10th grader, I knew I wanted to contribute in whatever way I could. If that was kickoff return, kick team, come in and give LaRue a fresher, a breather, work in the slot some, just blocking or whatever the case may be. I just knew I wanted to play. I wanted to contribute, to help our team.
And as a sophomore, just getting on the field, whether it's special teams or filling in, that's what it's all about, supporting the older guys. Rue was a senior with me, and physically he was a bigger dude than you at the time, had a little more experience, but he really did set such a great example for younger players. And I want you to tell me, who else wore number 34 at Northview before you?
Hey, that was Woo Woo. That was Jonathan Parker.
And we want to say hey to Woo Woo, who's just joined the conversation. Good to see you, Woo.
That's one of my big brothers right there. Yes, sir.
Hey, that's a pretty good one. Pretty good one to have, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh man, you just don't know. Woo woo.
Well, Mark, let's talk about that year. My senior year, your sophomore year, as the year unfolds. Obviously, everybody knows the story. We didn't have such a good first month, and it wasn't until Lawrence came back in the 5th game that we turned it around and won the last 10 of 11. Yeah. But you were getting on the field some during each of those games, and I want you to just kind of share any thoughts that you may have had during that time period.
Just proud that Coach Parrish, would call my number, to go in. Just glad that I was working hard enough in practice that, hey, I did kickoff return. Kind of worked hard enough to, return some punts with Chris Holmes. Man, I was just thankful that they had enough confidence in me, to get out there and contribute as a sophomore, because I know some of us played, not too many sophomores, but man, just to know that they had confidence in me, Bernard, I mean, man, that meant the world to me. So every opportunity that I got to go out on that field, man, I was trying to bring something, to help impact the game,
And that's a teammate. That's what's called being a teammate. If you're reliable, and even if you fail, which we all fail. Fail, you're still trying your best. Now, you may feel like crap and feel like, oh, I've let the team down. I did this, I did that. Well, there's always another play. There's going to be another play for you to redeem yourself. Now, I want to talk about Friday nights or Friday afternoons. We've already had the pep rally. It's awesome. Cheerleaders did awesome. The each of the grades are vying for who's the loudest, all of that. What do you recall about those Fridays between pep rally, school getting out, and that bus ride headed over to Rip Hughes?
Well, of course, after the pep rally, there was the movie and the meal. So it was our time, as players, to kind of bond, kind of just relax, kind of understand, the task at hand. And then, once you got the movie and the meal out of the way, it was time to head back to the school, and just kind of, start getting dressed, getting taped, and just trying to let your mind settle down. because we knew, whatever, whoever it was, Enterprise, Dothan, Sidney Lanier, we knew that the time was coming that we was going to have to execute, and something that I hope I never forget. Coach Ragsdale, Coach Griff, they would always do the FCA a lot of times. Once we got back to the school, and Coach Ragsdale, Coach Griffin, talking about some scriptures, prayer, things of that magnitude. Those are some things, man, that really, really helped calm me down, tone me down, and help me just put football in perspective. We knew what we had to do, but it was still bigger than football.
And Mark, some folks have a nervous energy. They're constantly moving before the game. Back then, maybe you had some earphones of some sort on and you got your music. But then there's other folks who go a different way with their pregame energy. They nap, or they're just calm. I suspect that was a little more of you as opposed to the former, the big energy. Got to get it out somehow. Is that fair?
Yeah. I had, usually I'd have to find a corner or just somewhere, just lean up against the wall in the gym.
Yeah.
Usually, we'd be half dressed, have your pants on, just thinking about, the new play, thinking about, what offense, what defense that team might be running, just somewhere to try to find a quiet place, let your mind calm down, let the butterflies settle down. But yeah, I was more of a guy just kind of sit off somewhere and just kind of let the mind calm down.
Guys, we're talking with Mark Saffold. Mark graduated in 88. He was number 34. He was on our state championship team in 85 as a sophomore. We're kind of running through that time period. We're going to move on beyond that season. But before we do, Mark, I want to ask you your impressions of Legion Field and getting to play in that game.
You walk into Legion Field. Well, number one, the bus ride up to Legion Field was awesome. It's like, you're on the freeway and those trailways, and that bus is moving and you get into that Birmingham traffic and you're in a different place. But, walking into Legion Field, I was awestruck, just thinking of, okay, this is where Coach Bear Bryant walks around. This is where the Tide plays. This is where Auburn plays. Man, it was huge.
Yeah.
And you think the field is bigger, but it's actually the same dimensions,
And Mark, I think that's why Coach Parrish and the coaches brought us up on that Tuesday
that was instrumental.
Yeah, because it was kind of like our Hoosiers moment where we got to see the field is the same dimensions as Rip Hughes. It just happens to have a lot more stands. But I have quite vivid memories of that whole week and that day of the game. But I remember leaving that Holiday Inn and driving to the stadium and just having this nervous confidence is the best way I can describe it. We had been through so many wars, but we get into the second half of that game. We're up by a few touchdowns, and it's not an area we had been in the whole season, really.
Yeah.
What do you recall about that second half a little bit and the celebrations and things?
That's, as you said, Bernard, that wasn't a place that we hadn't been too often, because a lot of our battles were overtime, down to the last wire. Clark, kicking the winning field goal in the last few seconds. So that second half, it was unfamiliar, but man, it was certainly enjoyable. And if you think about all the battles that we had gone through, perhaps we were deserving of that because we had worked so hard. We had been through so much, and now everything, really just came together. Defense, offense, special teams, just everybody was on the same sheet.
It didn't start out that way. It wasn't until Cat returned that fumble, and it just kind of changed everything. But Mark, of course, we win that game. We're state champs. but you're still a sophomore. You got 2 more seasons.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that coming back the next year. We had so many guys graduate, but you still had some very talented players on both sides. That you come off such a big high. It's hard to be the champ because everybody's gunning for you. What was that like those last 2 years for you?
Well, I'll tell you the truth, Bernard. My junior year, like you said, coming off of that high as a sophomore, I come into that junior year, and there's no more LaRue. It's Mark Saffold.
Yep.
It's a Ted Yost. It's a Chris Donnell. It's like there's no more LaRue in front to go in and give a break to.
That's right.
It's a Saffold now, and junior year was a year of growing for me. To be honest with you, I really didn't understand the whole responsibility piece, man. It's like I said, there's no more LaRue. It's you're in the game all the time now, Saffold.
Right.
So
yeah. No, but you had a lot of game experience sophomore year, different responsibilities. So that probably puts you in pretty good light, being a little more confident with your experiences.
It did.
Going into your senior year, the fall of '87, the offense is completely revamped. There's a lot of guys have graduated, and it's every year is a different year. Did you enjoy those last 2 years? Was it frustrating for you? Did you find some personal successes, team successes?
I would say junior year was a year of growing for me. Senior year, I really felt like I was ready then. All the different battles. We didn't win as much, senior year, but it's football. You have those ebbs and flows. But senior year, man, I really felt like I had grown so much. And hey, if it was running the ball, if it was tackling somebody, whatever, man, if coach told me to run and play linebacker, I would have did that. Just anything, willing to help the team. But I will say, man, during my junior year, like I said, that was a year of growing up. And I remember one time, Bernard, I missed practice. Just flat out didn't come to practice one day. And I had to roll. A lot of people don't know what that is, but I had to do rolls after practice one day. And man, I felt so disappointed that I had let the team down. And that was instrumental in helping me grow, because I didn't understand what accountability was fully. And
there's no such thing as rolling anymore.
Nope.
But for those of you
not anymore,
never had the pleasure, you have your entire uniform on, including your helmet.
Yeah.
And it's pretty simple. You lay down on the turf and roll. Roll. And within about 15 to 20 yards, you're dizzy. And you're not rolling in a straight line anymore. You're at an angle. And they used to say that there was a trick, that if you could put your arms out in front of you and look through the circle between your fingers, maybe you might keep your equilibrium. That was nothing. It was.
I never discovered that.
No. 50 yards was just shy of bearable. 100 yards, you're throwing up every time. Awful.
Yeah.
Awful. What a deterrent. Could you imagine if they try to do that now? Mamas and daddies would be unglued.
Yeah.
Unglued.
But that was one of the best things for me, though.
Yeah.
It really
I hear you, Mark, and it brings you back. It brings you back to maybe it squares you up mentally and brings you where you think you need to be. And guys, I'm talking with Mark Saffold. We got just a couple more questions. A couple more minutes. Want to welcome that scoundrel Pat Fitch is in the house.
Pat.
He said the Saffold brothers, the Saffold brothers and the Fitch brothers need to hit the weight room together sometime soon. Well, Mark, did you have any aspirations I know you ended up at UAB after school, after high school, but did you have any aspirations to play football or any other sports in college?
Well, after high school, I joined the Marines, Bernard. I went straight into the Marines,
Mhm.
and from the Marines, I went on to UAB.
Mhm.
But any kid, I was hoping to play a little football after high school, but that didn't pan out. But went straight into the Marines. Had a great career from there. Did my time. Came up to Birmingham. Got at UAB, graduated, got my degree. But yeah, man, my Marine Corps time was really instrumental in helping me in life.
Any parallels? There has to be any parallels between playing team sport like football and being part of the Marines, being part of a group that you were able to utilize some of that.
Yeah, being in the Marines, every lesson or everything that I had to do, man, it was either running or it was something mental. And I always relied on what I learned out on the football field.
Mhm.
Just every sprint I ran, I thought about that when I was in the Marines. Every time I might have gotten tackled hard and had to get up, I thought about that in the Marines, man. It's everything in the Marines. It's team concept. It's about that. It's about your buddy next to you, just like football.
Any of your Northview coaches in your head when you're going through some of your military training?
uh, Probably Coach Parrish all the time.
Saffold, what in the Sam Hill's going on?
Yeah.
Mark, I want to welcome Shaq. Michael Shackelford has just joined
That's
us.
my partner in crime right there.
Jack, it's good to see you, bud. I'm glad you're with us for just our last couple of minutes here. And Aaron Amanda Howell, who's been a guest on the show. Aaron, thanks for joining us. Guys, I'm talking with Mark Saffold. We got just a couple of minutes left here. Mark, when you look back on your high school days, what brings a smile to your face?
I think what brings a smile to my face, Bernard, is all of the teachers, all of the coaches, of course, the administration, everyone cared for us.
Mhm.
They cared about how we turned out. Every class I took, man, every teacher they were truly concerned, and they cared for us. That's what comes to mind. Also what comes to mind is just how our coaches, Coach Parrish, Coach Ragsdale, Coach Griff, Coach Bubba, Coach Andrews, how they allowed us to grow up.
Mhm.
They knew we were teenagers, full of mischief, but they allowed us to grow. And I am very, very appreciative of that. And that really comes to my mind, man, how they just grew us up.
And that puts a smile on my face just hearing that from you, Mark. Thank you for spending some time, buddy, and just
Thank you,
running through
Bernard.
some of the good days. Really appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you, buddy.
Well, and guys, before we get out of here, I don't want to conclude before we pause for just a minute. Recognize Mike Henry lost his mom today,
Yes.
I believe. So please say a little prayer tonight for Mike. Maybe reach out to him and say hello. Tell him you're thinking of him, you love him. But Mike, we're certainly thinking of you and your family at this time. But anyway, I wanted to make sure we mentioned that this evening.
Right.
Guys, thanks again for coming in and another conversation with Cougars. And I've got them lined up. They're starting we got more folks coming up. And if they can be half as good as this conversation was tonight, I will be okay. But thank you, Mark. And you guys have a safe week. Please continue to do those things that are best for your family and for those around you and your loved ones. You all have a good week. Take care.